Today is an interesting day on Steep and Think. Welcome, everybody who's joining us. We're excited that you're here. We seem to be having some strange audio glitches today, so bear with us if you hear echoes or other unusual things. We're not entirely sure why that's happening, but we'll try to muddle through anyway because we're super excited to have our guest, Sharon Gillenwater, with us today. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, and as promised, we've got, I think, a really interesting topic today, and that is executive engagement in a time of AI noise. And this is all part of our goal on Steep and Think to bring you interesting and meaningful conversations about what it means to maintain humanity in an age of AI and how to think about bringing those two things together in a way that's thoughtful and commercially successful as well. And Sharon, you've got just incredible background of thinking through both of these areas, the executive engagement part and the AI part. So we're really excited to have you join us and have you share some of your wisdom and experience with us. Sharon, before we get started, could we ask you to tell us just a little bit about your background? I feel like you've got, just such an important perspective on our market, and I'd love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit for those who may not know you yet.
Sure. Well, I'm a 4-time founder, and I stumbled into entrepreneurship, and I stumbled into this executive engagement space. I took on a role back in around 2004, working on C-level events through a former colleague of mine who said, "You got to come into this space. It's great. You'll do a great job." And I quickly noticed that big tech companies were trying to reach the C-suite, CIOs in particular, and they had these high-end events, and they had a lot of trouble getting the right audience at these events. And so I started to investigate, well, what really works? What allows people to get the audience to these events? And it was all about relationships and that audience feeling seen and known by their hosts and having everything really highly customized for them. So I got into that space. I loved it. And what was really missing at the time was fingertip ready intelligence on the C-suite in the Fortune 500. Like C-suite down to VP level folks. And so I created a tool called Boardroom Insiders that was a SaaS tool, started that in around 2008 and ran that for 14 years. It got sold and then sold again to private equity, and it was shut down last July. So we have restarted it as ExecutiveIQ because when I started looking into it and started talking to our former customers, I consistently heard there's still a need for this, even in the age of AI.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me without an echo?
Yes.
Oh, thank God for that. So I think you make a great point there right in the opening. And Sharon, you and I have been working together back in the day when I was still at CSC. And I think the bit that caught me just now is that it was actual intelligence about those executives so they could relate and make it relevant. What do you think goes wrong with AI? And I'm not going straight in. You made this great remark about, let me quote you, about having been soured by AI, I think is how you put it.
Well, I think we all are on the receiving end of AI pitches. I know I certainly am. And it's very similar. It reminds me of the marketing automation tools that came about in the aughts. There was this promise of hyper personalization and you could make your marketing more relevant and the response rate would go up. But what we saw instead was, hi, Sharon, and then a bunch of stuff that wasn't relevant. And because it allowed teams to really scale this type of content, we were all inundated with what's now known as slop. But in those days, it came from marketing automation tools. Now it's coming from AI. It's the same thing. I posted something on LinkedIn a couple of days ago that compared 2 emails that I received within hours of each other, both completely cold emails. One was brilliant because I could tell the person actually went to my LinkedIn and looked at some of the posts that I had done and referenced those. The other one, I had no idea what they were talking about, what they were trying to sell to me, or why they would think I would want those things. So And I get at least, 5 or 6 of those in my inbox a day. And so the promise of AI is this would enable a better experience for the seller and the buyer, but that just hasn't happened. And we are all very frustrated by the slop that's coming into our email box and our DMs. So what I think about when we are reaching out to customers is, how do you not do that? And it just comes back to the old fashioned human way of looking at what this person has said, what they care about, what they're trying to accomplish, and tracking to those things, and not making it about you, but making it about them and showing them that you've really taken the time to get to know a little bit about them.
Well, and I know in my time at Serious Decisions, we certainly saw a lot of clients making really successful use of Boardroom Insiders for exactly that reason, because you needed some kind of deeper insights than what just your basic searches were going to tell you about executives. When you explain kind of the difference between something that is truly well researched and something that, just like you said, sort of has a very surface level of personalization that may or may not have anything really to do with what you care about, how do you kind of draw that distinction between successful and unsuccessful outreach?
Well, I'll give you one example. We really leave no stone unturned when we research people. And AI can give you a start, but it hallucinates. Lots of people have the same names in the world, and it creates kind of a Frankenstein profile. But what I think some of the most powerful content that we had at Boardroom Insiders and now Executive IQ is taking earnings call transcripts from a said company. And, say you're targeting the CMO or the CHRO at that company. They're not going to be talking on the earnings call, but the CEO is often talking about how much they're spending on initiatives that lie within those functions, or what their strategy is within those functions. What's their people strategy? What's their digital marketing strategy? And you can connect those dots right back to that functional leader, even though that leader may have said nothing publicly about what their objectives are. And that's where the real business acumen comes in. And actually, that's something that AI does a brilliant job with, which we used to have humans do at Boardroom Insiders. Our team had incredible business acumen. They could, keyword search a transcript and come up with the initiatives for a functional leader who's never said anything publicly. And that was our secret sauce for the most part. We also did deep dives into, their Instagram. And if they posted a gazillion pictures of sailing, we would know that they're interested in sailing, even though they've never said that, right? So we would just curate all of this information about the people that gave our customers a lot of insight into who they were, what they were interested in, and most importantly, what are the objectives that they are on the hook for in their job. And if you can go back to them and say, hey, I saw your CEO said X, Y, and Z. That's right within your wheelhouse. We've helped your competitor do something similar. That person, that leader, is almost obligated to have a conversation with you if you come at them with that information, because that is their job. That's what they're going to be fired for if they don't accomplish it. So they need to talk to everyone who legitimately comes to them saying, we can help you out with this.
Well, and I think that's the piece that to me makes the difference, is you've combined what you know about that person with a true reason for them to engage with you. Hey, we've helped your competitor do something that you're not doing. Mm-hmm. To me is, like you said, it's almost malpractice not to follow up on that and see if it's true.
Yes.
What are ways that you see people kind of making that connection? Because I feel like that's the piece that often falls apart in a lot of this cold outreach, especially to busy executives who are going to ignore 99.9% of what comes in. What do you think are the ways that people can sort of think through standing out in that situation with something meaningful?
Keep it short and focused on that one issue. You don't need to write an email that vomits out every single thing you know about them. It's like, what is the critical strategic objective that they are very likely to be thinking about all the time based on what the CEO said, and use the CEO's words to communicate that. Hey, I saw your CEO recently said X, Y, and Z. This must fall under your area of responsibility. We've done this, would love to share with you more. Those are the types of communications that we hear over and over from our customers. Wow, I've been trying to get a meeting with this person for a year, and I sent this one little piece from one of your profiles, and they got back to me in 5 minutes. Because you know what happens? They see it, they forward it to their chief of staff or their EA, and they're saying, set this up. And that's why you hear back from them so quickly. So it doesn't have to be a long email. In fact, it shouldn't. It should be very tightly focused on the one issue. And then, from there, you have the conversation.
Well, and sort of thinking about that, there are pieces of that AI can help with, and pieces of that are going to fundamentally come from a person, sort of thinking through that challenge. How would you describe that spectrum of, say, fully automated AI all in to fully human do it yourself? If you're thinking about, the ideal situation for someone doing executive outreach, how would you ask them to sort of contemplate that spectrum and think about where they should position a particular activity?
Well, what AI allows you to do is really go through a lot of the dense documents that the company has out there, from news articles and interviews to the earnings calls themselves, which are really important, to annual reports. And you can ask AI very pointed questions. So if you're selling into a CMO, you can ask it to review all of the documentation and to pinpoint the critical marketing objectives or how they're spending their budget from a marketing perspective this coming year. And then you can zero in on those issues. But in general, at the highest level, what I think and what we actually do at ExecutiveIQ is all of that information that would take an analyst days to go through. And really, because of the jargon used and the fact that, some of these earnings calls, they're not the most friendly from a language perspective and easy to understand, the AI will cut through all that and give you those core issues. And yes, you should verify. You should verify that those are indeed true, which we do. And then anything that touches a communication that you send via email or something that you engage on LinkedIn, don't use AI for that, because we all know when you have, and it's annoying. I think we've all become very annoyed when we see that. So, use AI to handle all the heavy lifting that is very difficult for the human brain to wrap its head around with so much content. And then be a human when you're dealing with humans.
That is great advice. If I can jump in, you made me think about something. Dealing with humans, do you find that AI helps you also prepare executives who may not be the greatest communicators to make better outreach or better informed communications with those executives, and even marrying the right executives up? These executive sponsorship relationships are so important. And getting that right or wrong is crucial for long-term relationships.
Absolutely. I use AI myself for emails and communication that I'm sending. Now, it's a starting point. You don't just generate it and send it out. Sometimes I might have a tone issue that I'm worried about, right? I don't want to sound testy. Sometimes I'm feeling annoyed and I don't want that to come across. So I will I'll put in what I'm thinking. I'll tell the AI that, or, on a more positive note, I want this person to feel this from this communication. I want this person to do. This is an old tenet of experience design when I was in the event business. What do you want your audience to feel, think, know, and do? And you design the experience to drive those things. You can tell the AI that, And it does a fairly decent job of managing the subtlety of the tone and, trying to drive the objectives that you want with whatever communication it is.
No, I think excellent advice, and I think a good perspective on making practical use of the tools that are available. It's not that you don't use them; it's that you use them wisely. Kind of thinking about that, and thinking about the fact that a lot of times it falls to marketing and sales to be sort of on the front lines of this work. What do you see as a particularly valuable role for marketing to play when it comes to executive engagement? And where do you think we really ought to rely on more of the sales function to be the lead?
Uh, Marketing is great at doing all of that legwork, the heavy lifting, the fine details. What are, pinpointing what are the hobbies or the charities that these executives are interested in, and doing the matchmaking, the ideation, the creativity. Well, we could, at this event, we could have an activity and we attach a charitable component to it. Who are the attendees who are on nonprofit boards and are very passionate about a certain issue? Maybe we could connect, donate the money to an organization where this person is on the board and they have a very close connection to, kind of sometimes it's like a board meant to help cure a certain disease that their family member had, right? Some issue that is close to their heart, and to just orchestrate all of those little things that don't look orchestrated once you're on site. They just add up to a delightful, thoughtful experience where everybody has a good time and comes away thinking, wow, that was amazing, right? It's all that stuff that happens in the background that looks organic, but it's not. There's a ton of work behind it, from all the communications to the seating charts, to the session abstract, the agenda, the session abstract that is written to appeal to one person in the room, because that's the exact challenge they're dealing with. It's all, you don't want sales spending their time doing that, and that's not their role. That's what marketing can do behind the scenes. And then sales is their partner, and sales is spoon fed in advance all of that insight about who's in the room. And there's a conversation with sales about that. I think the biggest challenge I've seen is getting sales engaged in this, getting them to believe that this is going to be helpful to them and worth their time. Often that's the challenge that I see. And sometimes it comes from fear. I don't know if you remember the first time you had a meeting with the C-suite or went into one of those C-level events. It's terrifying. It's intimidating. So sometimes it comes from fear, but sometimes it comes from arrogance. And that's the challenge, is to let sales know, like, well, you think you know these people, but here's some additional information that you might not know. I remember dealing with a company called Juniper a long, long, long time ago, and we were pitching them on Boardroom Insiders, and they were talking about a certain account. Oh, well, we know them so well, and they know us so well. We don't need this. And so I thought, okay, I went away, and then a few months later, my contact called and said, not only does sales not know them, the client thinks we're called Jupiter. So if they don't even know the name of the company, I think maybe the relationship isn't as strong as we thought. So that's, fear and arrogance, or maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, that reminds me of an executive on an account once who wanted to boldly go with a bottle of whiskey to see a gentleman who was a Mormon. I stopped him at the last moment and suggested maybe a different present.
Yeah, or maybe just don't do anything at all. Sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something that's based on an assumption or wrong intelligence. And you asked about AI and where AI fails. It really fails on the people searches. It does a brilliant job of analyzing companies because the context window for a company is much smaller than the context window for a person, which is basically the entire open web, right? And then you have people with the same name. So I have already heard many horror stories about people going in with assumptions or not things that they think are accurate about a person. I heard one where there was a meeting with a speaker that a company had hired for one of their big keynotes. And the main executive on the client side couldn't go. And so they delegated to the team, yes, do the meeting with the speaker. So the team AI'd the speaker prior to the meeting, and they started referencing all the stuff they learned. And the speaker said, yeah, that's not me. That's a different, whatever their name was. And that's the AI is so confident. That's what fools. I get fooled too. I got fooled just earlier this week. I sent something to my team that I had put together about some executives from Disney, and 2 out of 3 weren't even there anymore. And if I had just done another search, I would have realized that, but I was in a hurry, and so but there were 2 executives who I was citing who were not even there and had actually not been there for more than 6 months. So I had egg on my face. But the AI just states it so confidently that as humans, it's like being gaslit, right, by the AI. And you're like, well, it's so confident that this person is in this role. You have to check, and that's what our team does. And thank God it's not me in charge of that department, because I move so quickly. But the team that's actually doing that work is absolutely meticulous at finding that, because a lot of our information goes straight into the hands of a senior executive. So it absolutely has to be right.
Yeah, that's definitely a high wire act, and you don't want to be jumping off without a net. Well, and speaking of that, you've rebuilt a company, and you did it pretty quickly.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that journey, kind of what brought you to that moment that said, you know what, you mentioned you had client demand, but what made you, feel excited about going down that road again? And what did you do differently on take 2?
Well, not a lot. I think the headline on what this has been like is we accomplished in about 5 months what it took us 6 years to do last time. And that's all due to not just AI, primarily AI, but also the relationships I had in place and the experience of all of the people involved. My 2 co-founders are 2 people who ran the business while I was out of it, after I had sold it in 2022. And they've been with the business for a very long time. I would not have even thought about doing this without them, because I've been out of it for 4 years. As far as externally, what has changed? Not a lot either. Surprisingly, not a lot of new competitors have emerged. Budget competitors, maybe, but not head-to-head competitors. This work is still primarily done by a handful of consultants who are very good at it and now have AI as a secret weapon and know how to use it and how not to use it. And I talked to some of those folks. I just wanted to make sure. I thought, surely there's some new category killer tool out there that is, they've got it covered. We don't have to do this. But there really wasn't. And I heard this over and over again from customers and people working in the space. I heard from a few people who said, AI can do all of this now. We don't need another Boardroom Insiders. But that was more the exception. And then I started testing AI with this type of use cases, and I was really blown away on what it can do on company analysis, not so much on the people analysis. So what we did is, one big difference is we've added company profiles to our database. We never had company profiles before, because for humans to maintain those on a quarterly earnings call cycle would be very, very difficult. Thousands and thousands of organizations. AI does a great job with the company analysis. You just have to know what to ask it. And as experts in what our customers are looking for, we really narrow the prompts to, things like, what are the 5 biggest opportunities for vendors with this company? What are they spending money on? What are they buying? And what's your proof that they're doing this? Because with skepticism around AI, we want to provide proof. How do we know that they are spending money on this? Well, so-and-so executive said X, Y, and Z. And then what are the best ways to get in the door at this company? And I'm not talking about, here's the email for procurement. It's like, what events do the executives go to? Where are they talking? Do they have proprietary events that you could go to? What are the industry conferences they go to? What are their key partners in the tech space? If you're a big partner of one of those companies, that might be an in for you. Do they have little like innovation sandboxes that they run? Do they have internal venture funds that you can access the people who run those and put your solution in front of them? Who are the key players who make decisions in these areas? When we had Boardroom Insiders, one of the big challenges we had was in the go-to-market space, there's just a broad spectrum of expertise and sophistication and business acumen, right? And so some of our customers would look at our content and they would know exactly what to do with it. And they would get so excited. Oh my gosh, I know exactly what to do with this. Others would say, oh my gosh, this is amazing, but what do I do with it? This time around, we can bake that stuff into our product. So we launched with the GTM TLDR for sellers on every company record. And moving forward, imagine you could use natural language search to say, okay, I'm targeting executives in the Northeast who are focused on initiatives around blah, 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 blah. I want to have an event. Tell me what kind of event I should design. What are the activities? What are the topics that will appeal to this audience? And our tool is going to be able to tell you that. Now, you could just take what's in our tool and put it in AI now, but what we see as the opportunity is to answer the question through the product, what do I do with this information?
Well, and kind of building on that, you're giving us, I think, some really, really smart questions to be asking and thinking about when it comes to really understanding a company and its executives and how best to engage it. Where do people go wrong with this? When you've got kind of all of the ingredients, you've got a team that knows what they're doing for the most part. Hopefully, you've got high motivation to be successful in a particular company or with a particular deal where you want to engage a group of executives. You've got a decent amount of funding and you've got buy-in from the executives at your company. Yet those conditions can be present in a lot of situations, but a lot of times people don't succeed. What are some of the things you see kind of going wrong? What's the fail mode there?
Well, you mentioned a lot of the critical success factors. You have to have that executive commitment because you can't build this out from the middle of the org chart. You need that executive commitment. I think the biggest thing, sometimes you have that, but when you don't see results right away, the program gets cut. People get scared and they cut it. And that's death, right? Because this is a long game, very long, years. And the companies that do it well know that. And they have executive commitment from the top. I'm thinking of 3 companies right now. I'm thinking of Dell, I'm thinking of Salesforce, and I'm thinking of Adobe. And those were all longtime Boardroom Insiders customers. And when I was working in the event space, if you go to Moscone in San Francisco during Dreamforce, they have banners that hang the full length of the buildings around Moscone with the faces of the Procter & Gamble CEO saying something about Salesforce, the face of General Motors, like all these big companies. And I remember a client looking, going, God, how do they get that? And I'm like, I'll tell you how they get that. I read Mark Benioff's book, Behind the Cloud, in 2010. And he said, I go straight to the C-suite, and he loves it. He loves dealing directly with customers. So you have a CEO who's, authentic, who's gregarious, who loves talking to his customers. And that's how it happens, because you've got that commitment from the top, and he's got the infrastructure. Benioff has like multiple assistants. And they are orchestrating all of this. The program is given the oxygen and the resources that it needs. And there's no fear that, oh, we're not really seeing the results yet. They have been doing this for years and years, and that's how they're able to build those relationships. Dell has C-level customers on stage with Michael Dell at their events. You look at those results and you back in and say, those are the companies that are doing it well because it has commitment from the very top. I've seen other programs that were just brilliant, but if they didn't return pipeline or deal velocity within 2 quarters, they were cut because someone's saying, why are we spending money on this? So you really need someone at the top who's like, I don't care, we're doing this. We're continuing to do this. So there are a lot of critical success factors like the budget, like having the people and tools who know how to do it. I think, right now, what I've noticed since coming back into the space is, and this is kind of difficult too, when executive engagement is handled by different people all over the organization, and it creates a lot of noise from the customer side of things. Like if you have 20 different groups within the org reaching out to a customer CIO, that's like borders on harassment, right? And I remember one customer I was working with back in the day, how they solved that is you had to actually get corporate permission to send an email to a customer, which I don't think that's the way to manage it. But now executive engagement is becoming a dedicated role, which I think is interesting. I've noticed this with, Anthropic and with Stripe and a lot of companies advertising for this. And I know a lot of our customers who are 100% focused in their role on executive engagement. But I think what I'm seeing is they'll just have like one person do it. And that person it's difficult for them to be really strategic and proactive because they're always operating on a fire drill. I heard one customer say, the first name, who's the CEO of NVIDIA? Why am I forgetting his name? Oh, it doesn't matter. But, someone said, someone's meeting with X, and, we all know who that person is, right? And so she said, I had to spend the next 2 weeks just working on that. And everything else I was working on was put off to the side because she's basically a one-person show orchestrating executive engagement for the entire organization. So, I think companies like Salesforce, Adobe, and Dell, they have more of a team doing that. And I think if you really want to do it well, you have to make that investment.
Yeah, I think your point about being willing to play the long game is really key. I think not giving up too soon and expecting, sort of transaction level outcomes when it's a relationship level sport, if you will. And really making sure that, you're well prepared to understand what it's going to take to build that trust over the long term. Kind of thinking about that, there is always that push, though, to scale and to get results quickly. And one of the, I guess, kind of biggest challenges we see with the executive engagement programs, and indeed kind of strategic one-to-one account-based programs generally too, when you think about this idea of sort of scaling with soul, and growing and expanding what you're doing, that is a fundamentally sort of individual focused strategic activity, what's advice that you would have for teams that are getting pushed in that direction? And what are some of the things that you've seen work? And what would you say some things are kind of non-negotiables when it comes to keeping it strategic and one-to-one?
Yeah. So Chris Akeson says, Jensen, and Arena, Jensen. Yeah. My client said, so-and-so has a meeting with Jensen. We have to drop everything. So thank you. Well, I know it's hard to ask sales to get out of a transactional mindset, right? But as leaders, I think we have to put them in the right mindset and really bring to life where the customer is coming from. This might be a little bit of a sidetrack, but stay with me. We help go-to-market teams show up as the trusted advisors that their customers are hoping they will be. So we talked about fear. We talk about scaling with soul. So often, we talked about what marketing does for sales, but they're the ones going in, right, to the meeting. And a lot of salespeople are very transactional. They want the deal, right? But there needs to be a mindset shift. If you really are going to be a company with soul and is going to scale with soul, there has to be a mindset shift on the part of everyone in the organization that we are in service to these customers, and these customers are human beings. And if you think of this whole scenario from a customer perspective, they are human beings with really tough objectives to accomplish. They've got a lot of pressure. They want you to be amazing. And when you come in and you're transactional, or you seem to just be pushing on the deal or shoving products down their throat rather than solving their very real problems, or if you are presenting like you're wanting to solve problems but you appear fake, that's a turnoff. And why do we see most deals are ending in no decision? I mean, that's the biggest competitor now. It's not this company or that company. Your biggest competitor is no decision. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I believe it's because they have this whole group of vendors come in and they all sound the same. They don't have confidence, and they're on the hook for achieving a specific objective. And if they don't, they might get fired, right? And so they want you, they're hoping you will come in and be amazing. And so that's what we want to help our customers do, is be amazing, inspire confidence, be about the customer, know all of their pain points and what they're trying to do, and come in with ideas for how to solve those things and reference points for how they've solved those things before. So what scaling with soul looks like to me is our customers are having an amazing experience, taking the and we're able to play a very small role in that by feeding them information that is helpful. The salespeople, they're having an amazing experience. Their customers are having an amazing experience. They are blown away and like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. This is such a better buying experience than I've ever had. And from our company's standpoint, from our team's standpoint, our team is getting so much satisfaction from that. And they're getting rewarded both financially and psychically from what we are able to accomplish as a company. And that goes from, our small company having people enjoy their work and being rewarded financially, all the way up to those CEOs together on stage at a Dell event or an Adobe event, authentically, enjoying their relationship and excited about what they have to share with the audience and the success that they've had together.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think I really like that phrase too, scaling with soul. I think that's just a really neat way to think about your objective, and to your point, keeping the customer at the center of it. A little bit of a different question, but I want to make sure we touch on this today because I think you've got a great point of view and your team does this all the time. You've got an executive going into a really important meeting with another executive or a high-level salesperson. And generally speaking, they're going to think they know a lot about a lot of things, and they probably do. But you need to tell them some different things and coach them on how to have the most successful interaction and get them to take in the information that you so painstakingly researched on their behalf. What are some tips that you have for the person doing the coaching of the executive on your side of things? What are some do's and don'ts to make that a successful discussion and really enablement?
Well, I wish I had one of our customers on here to talk about that. Well, Dorothea, you might be able to talk about it. You've done it, right? But I'll speak first, and you might have something to add. I'm sure you will. But we provide these profiles, right? And we have various types of customers who are accomplishing various things and selling various things. So some of our customers will put that entire profile in front of their executive, and some executives might have an appetite for that, but I would say just keep it very focused. What are you trying to accomplish out of this one meeting? What is the one message you need that customer to come away with? And give the executive whatever information from that profile aligns with that exact thing. Sure, you can sprinkle in some hobbies or things of that nature, but don't give them too much, because they are doing many of these a day, especially since COVID, and they can do a lot on Zoom now. They're just meeting after meeting after conversation after conversation. And you can support them by just keeping it very focused and targeted and aligned with whatever your objective is for that one meeting as a company.
Yeah, if I jump, am I still echoing?
No.
Well, I'll try. I think Harsha told me I am, which is why I'm so quiet. I think the other thing is to actually do the same as a marketer who briefs about the executive you're helping to meet that other person. And that's really where you can understand what is their personality, what are they likely to go off on to talk to this person about, and then try and coach them using their words and their thoughts and goals to turn around and why it is important to not go there but the other way to help them achieve that goal. So you're almost doing a sales pitch for a sales pitch. But you have to, this work, like if you have to run the whole program. I was lucky enough to spend 9 years on a large account, and I just knew all the clients, and I knew all the usual suspects who would visit them from our side.
That's a key point, because the people who are doing the direct executive engagement, they're human beings too, right? And I think that's really important. And another way I've seen things go wrong is when you have executive sponsors or designated executive sponsors who don't like to do this, or they're not people, or they're shy. They're very talented in one area, but make sure in your executive sponsorship program, if that's what you want to call it, that you are doing matchmaking on your end with people who have an affinity for those other people, who are just people. I mentioned Benioff, why he's so successful with it. Not everyone is like that. In fact, I've had customers tell me, like, well, we don't have a Mark Benioff. Our CEO is shy. Our CEO is a nerd. They don't like to talk to people. Okay, well, what about your CMO? What about, you have a whole C-suite. Don't force a square peg into a round hole. Work with what you have and to give you the best chance of success.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And every person has some gift to bring to the table. Every executive that got in that role got there for a reason. They may not look like others, but they have something special. So I think you can always tap into that. And just wanted to appreciate Jesse's comment about your book, Scaling with Soul, which I think definitely should be on people's reading lists if it isn't already. And we'll put a link in with the video to make sure that people can get to that. But just to sort of wrap things up, a couple of maybe lightning round questions for you, Sharon, if you've got a moment. And the first one is, what's the most dangerous belief in B2B marketing right now?
Oh my gosh, I took notes because I thought these were really hard. I think the most dangerous belief is that marketers can just AI their ways to success without the care, the creativity, the authenticity, and the humanity that is required to do business at the highest level. I'm kind of reading some of this, sorry.
No, it's okay.
So AI doesn't have any of these things. And only people have these things. And in our customer space, which is primarily big tech, they have cut a lot of people. And that worries me because there are some amazing ABMers and executive engagement folks out of work right now. If any of you are hiring and want to know who they are, I'll tell you. But that's what worries me, is taking people out of the equation is not the way to go. I know that for certain.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I think we all do. Last but not least, 5 years from now, a few people are going to have really gotten the AI human balance right, and we're going to see some big winners. What do you think they will have gotten right?
They understood the division of labor between AI and people, which is, what I was just talking about. They let AI handle all the tough synthesis and scaling of the insights. And that frees the talent, the human talent, up to really focus on the creative side of things, the coaching of the executives, the thoughtful orchestration of executive to executive conversations. That's really what executive engagement is. It's orchestrating high stakes conversations between executives in a way that moves the needle for your business on both sides, both to the benefit of the customer and the benefit of the service provider. And that requires a lot of heavy lifting by some very smart people. I think executive engagement people are some of the smartest people I've ever met, and creative. And so they've gotten that division of labor spot on.
Well, I can't think of a more valuable note to end on than that, Sharon. Thank you so very much for taking time to be with us today. And just a reminder, everybody, you've got a book to read. We're leaving you with homework, Scaling with Soul. And just really thank you so much for your time today and your insights.
Thank you. And I would encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow ExecutiveIQ for more insights like this.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. And on behalf of Dorothea and me, thanks everybody for joining us for our second episode of Steep and Think. We're going to be coming to you with more. Stay tuned and go ahead and follow Steep and Think on LinkedIn or either of us if you want to learn more and stay in touch. And thank you for your time today too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.